Number 5 on this list is the Panama 7. The following story happened only a few years ago and is a horrifying tale where 7 people in Panama were found dead from a terrifying ritual. The BBC writes 10 people have been arrested on suspicion of murder. The suspects and all victims were thought to belong to the Nagobi indigenous community. The grave was discovered after 3 villagers escaped and made their way to a local hospital last weekend, prosecutor Rafael Baloy said. They then alerted authorities about several families being held by an indigenous-run sect. On Wednesday, police raided the community located in a jungle region in northwest Panama, some 250 kilometers from the capital Panama City. They were performing a ritual inside the structure. In that ritual, there were people being held against their will, being mistreated, said Mr. Balois. All of these rites were aimed at killing them if they didn't repent their sins. Inside the makeshift church, officers found a naked woman, machetes, knives, and a ritually sacrificed goat, Mr. Balois said. The site was controlled by a religious sect called the New Light of God, believed to have been operating in the region for about 3 months. According to Mr. Balois, the kidnapping and torture started last Saturday after one of the members claimed to have received a message from God. The victims were then kidnapped from their homes, beaten, and killed. So let me ask you guys, does that sound like something that God would tell you to do? Gather up a bunch of people, hold them against their will, and torture and kill them? To me, if any sort of entity was to tell you to do something like that, then that would be a demon or maybe the devil. Maybe that demonic entity would portray themselves as God or someone else, but I don't know what type of God would do something like this. To be completely honest, folks, I'm really not a religious person, so when I hear something like this, I believe that this was the work of people who were extremely sick or misguided. But I can guarantee to them, they probably really felt like they were acting as the vessel for some higher being. I think in this instance though, they really did misjudge who that higher being was. This happened literally back in 2020 as well, guys, so really not that long ago. My heart truly does go out to the people that were killed and to the families of those who were taken way too soon. Number 4 on this list is The Devil Made Me Do It. This famous Ed and Lorraine case may be the best example of when someone tried to claim a demonic possession led to a crime. The case is centered around a young man named Oren Cheyenne Johnson and the man that he murdered, a 40-year-old named Alan Bono. Mental Floss says there was no question that Johnson killed Bono. However, his defense attorney, 33-year-old Martin Minella, planned to argue that the 19-year-old was not guilty by virtue of demonic possession. Ahead of the trial, Minella pled his case through the media, giving interviews to major press outlets. The courts have dealt with the existence of God, and now they'll be asked to deal with the existence of the demonic spirit, Minella told People. The day after Johnson was arrested, Lorraine Warren called the Brookfield police and blamed the killing on a demon. Johnson didn't actually say the devil made him do it, he only claimed that he didn't remember stabbing Bono. However, according to the testimony of an officer on the scene, Johnson did tell the police, "I think I hurt someone." Now, this defense didn't actually work out for Johnson. He was inevitably convicted of first-degree manslaughter and sentenced to 10 to 20 years in prison. However, he didn't serve nearly that many and was released after less than 5 years for being a really good prisoner. In my opinion, I kind of doubt that this guy was actually under the influence of a demonic possession, and clearly the jury, they felt the same way. That being said though, he did seem pretty committed to that story during the trial, so I suppose it's something to consider. Number 3 on this list is Manuel Vela. Several years ago, Manuel Vela killed his pregnant girlfriend. It was a brutal murder and an incident which climaxed in a police chase where he was finally captured. Many people obviously asked the question, why? And the answer may shock you. The Mystique says Vela told the interviewers that the murder of his girlfriend and her child were part of a religious and political statement. He was possibly trying to enlighten the crowd of his opinion on pro-life ideologies. However, it seemed like his motivation behind the murders wasn't just politically backed. He went on to say how he is the Antichrist and the voices in his head guided him on what to do. Many of his analogies were akin to things that have happened in the history of Christianity. Christianity. Vela literally believed that he was the Antichrist, guys. That sounds like a pretty textbook example of a demonic possession to me. At this point, Vela's competency to stand trial was in question and a hearing needed to be done. Manuel never actually made it to the hearing though, because in January 2017, authorities found him dead in his cell. He had taken his own life. Number 2 on this list is the Son of Sam. The Son of Sam was a killer that caused one of the biggest citywide police investigations ever. Ranker says New York City during the summer of 1976 was a hotbed of anger, frustration, and fear, and David Berkowitz, aka the Son of Sam, didn't help the matter by killing 6 people and wounding 7 others in the span of 1 year. After his arrest, Berkowitz told police that he was under the control of a demon named Harvey who inhabited his neighbor's dog and implored him to kill people. Once, during a 3-month break from his murder spree, Berkowitz wrote the New York Post to say, "I am still here like a spirit roaming the night, thirsty, hungry, seldom stopping to rest." After being incarcerated, Berkowitz received a sentence of 365 years in prison, by the way. He became a born-again Christian, but he still believes that the devil and God are fighting for possession of his soul. No wonder this guy got 365 years. Not only did he kill 6 people, but to write to the Times saying that he's still thirsty and hungry, yeah, this is clearly a man that needs to be kept behind bars for literally ever. Once again, I want to stress the fact here that I'm not a religious man personally. When I hear a story like this, I believe that it's far more likely that the Son of Sam was just truly mentally unstable and probably in need of some very serious help. He truly believed, though, that a demon had called upon him and was using his body as a vessel for evil. We may never know what truly caused him to do this, but at least he's locked up for good and won't be doing it again anytime soon. And finally, number 1 on this list is Michael Taylor. Several decades ago, Taylor was apparently possessed by a horrible demon, and this time it really got the better of him. Ranker says in 1974, Michael Taylor was just a simple butcher living in Ossett, England, who was suddenly overcome by an evil spirit. He had an exorcism performed on October 5th and 6th of 1974, and while it went okay, the priests weren't able to expel all of the demons. According to Bill Ellis, an authority on folklore and the occult in contemporary culture, in an all-night ceremony, the exorcist believed that they had invoked and cast out at least 40 demons, including those of incest, bestiality, blasphemy, and lewdness. At the end, exhausted, they allowed Taylor to go home, although they felt that at least 3 demons, insanity, murder, and violence, were still left in him. So, you know, kind of the big 3. After he returned home, Taylor immediately murdered his wife by ripping out her eyes and tongue and then tearing off most of the skin from her face, finally strangling their pet poodle. Police found Taylor standing in the street naked and covered in blood, shouting, "It is the blood of Satan." This is truly one of the most graphic crimes I've ever read about, honestly. Like, to think that this happened in real life is extremely scary. Also, if he was possessed by some type of demon, like, what demon was this and how do we all avoid this? I feel like this is pretty pertinent information considering what Taylor ended up doing.
Number 5, the invisible guest. Our first clip today was posted to Reddit and it's a delightfully strange one. It's CCTV footage of a security guard working in Buenos Aires at a hospital late at night around 3 a.m. Now, traditionally, that's kind of like the witching hour, but like no big deal or anything. Anyway, take a quick little look at the clip for us. We can see the security guard get up from his desk, clipboard in hand, opening the belt, even going so far as bringing in a wheelchair for this guest who doesn't appear to exist, at least not physically. Watch this clip as many times as you'd like, you'll never see who he's letting in because they just don't seem to exist at all. It's unsettling to say the least. Now, let's put on our rational caps and take a look at this. Let's give a little Scully approach. This could just be an extremely bored security guard working the graveyard shift at a hospital, doing anything to make himself entertained. I've worked long night shifts by myself, and let me tell you, I would do stupid stuff like this all the time just to keep myself entertained. Now, the Mulder approach, and that's why we're here, is that this could be any number of supernatural things. A ghost? Some sort of demonic entity possessing the security guard and making him open the door. It's the way the guard does it also routinely, as if he doesn't even realize anything is wrong or, nobody's there, that makes it so unsettling. And I think that's the word for this clip. It's unsettling. It's hard to describe. The clip went fairly viral for its bizarre nature, and the hospital clarified that the guard never registered a patient to enter. So either it was a prank or the demon just didn't have enough ID on it and just waltzed on in. So let me know what you all think. Is this a bored prankster or something supernatural piercing the veil? And if you're looking for a lot more strange security footage, cryptids, creatures, tales of the unknown, or tales of the very known, Top 5 Scary has all of that and then some in spades. We've got just about everything scary you could possibly think of. So click on through, subscribe if you'd like, but stay watching this video, okay? Because we got way more scary stuff coming up for you in just a second. Number 4, a gnome. Our next clip looks like something out of the start of a low budget like A24 horror movie. I started watching this clip and I thought it was kind of boring, and then as soon as it got going, I literally pressed my nose to the computer screen, so I hope you do the same. This clip was posted to the subreddit Humanoid Encounters and explained that this had happened to their relatives, and they don't really know what's going on. But what we can see in the clip is bizarre. Someone is outside on their front porch, shining a light into the darkness, trying to find what is stalking them on their property. It can be a little hard to see, but behind this big rock, we see what looks like tiny little hands peering out, trying not to be seen, playing a spectral game of hide and seek. It's really difficult to figure out what's going on in this clip. We only have this flashlight helping us out here, but it almost seems too like there may be more than one of these creepy little crawlies running around back there. The OP who posted the clip originally suggested that these creatures are indigenous folklore of little people, which interestingly is a myth that's surprisingly common across the globe, with cultures in Ireland, Greece, the Philippines, New Zealand, and Indonesia, to name a few, all having local legends about little people or gnomes or elves or things like that, creeping in the night. Don't you worry, that'll come up more later. Now, Scully mode for a second. This could extremely easily be someone's kids being told to play along for a prank, get some views, or even someone just hiding behind a rock playing with a doll, poking it out. The only evidence we have against this really is that the clip looks weird, and OP's word that they swear this is a close family member and wouldn't do this sort of thing. And going through the YouTube channel, you can see it's mostly just family videos, so it does make sense. So what do we think, YouTube comments? Little people creeping around, or is this a tall tale? As like a height pun. I don't know if everybody picked up on that. It's pretty smart. Number 3, creature prowling. This next clip was originally posted to TikTok and then made its way over to the subreddit High Strangeness, which I definitely recommend if you're looking for a little weird stuff in your day-to-day. Extremely fitting title because I don't think there's anywhere else this could have been posted. The footage comes to us from the Philippines and was seen late at night by a group of friends walking home. You ready for it? Here you go. So, as you could probably see in the clip, there is something horrifying prowling around on top of this roof. Certainly looks human, but looking human is an easy trick, although this creature doesn't seem like it has that one down 100% just yet. It needs a little work on its human impression. The eyes are glowing, peering out at you. The eye shining is what really gets me about this clip. It's very creepy, reminds me more of a cat or a dog's eyes when being recorded in the night than does any human. Could this possibly be a skinwalker mid-transformation that's been caught attempting to disguise itself? It definitely fits the bill of a creature walking like an animal but looks like a human. It almost looks too like it's sussing out its options, waiting for the right moment to pounce down. Now, let's get rational, get our Scully hat on. The most likely, if not uncomfortable possibility, is that this could just be someone under the influence of one or all of the substances who's having a really bad night. However, it could also be something paranormal, supernatural, creeping around caught on camera, imitating a human being. Is this someone wearing the skin of a person, or just someone having a night they're not going to remember for a few weeks? You let me know because I could go either way on this one. Number 2, a ghost. Coming up next is this clip that was making the rounds of an Instagram user going live. The user was complaining that he had seen something strange earlier in the day. He had mentioned that he had seen what he believed to be a Dogman that he thought he saw, a fairly popular cryptid that gets mentioned every now and again and has been kind of picking up in popularity lately. He was talking on the live and then happened to hear something strange outside, so naturally he went to go look and the results were horrifying. Let's watch the clip.
That I've been
you see it? Well, we can roll it again if you didn't. At around a minute into the clip, when the user was going live, he hears something strange and goes in to check on what it was. And we see something rush by, if only for a second, that doesn't look like it came from this world even a little bit. It looks like a tall creature running by on its hind legs, and I'm gonna be honest, I immediately thought it was a werewolf. It kinda has that werewolfy vibe. Here's the thing about this one. Either this video is one of the best fakes I have ever seen, with a fantastic creature effects budget and some real impressive practical effect wizardry, and it's got an actor who really knows how to sell being scared, or this is actually something that happened to a real terrified guy and we caught his reaction live. I think it being on Instagram Live lends a little bit of credibility, I think, since it makes these things a lot harder to fake when you have to do it live. Ask any stage production. The thing doesn't seem like it's someone in a costume either. The silhouette looks all wrong. It really just does look like it was a werewolf caught on tape. Scully mode. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if I have one. Molder mode. That is a werewolf. Full stop. That's a real werewolf. Why don't you all let me know down below in the comments what we think that might be down there, but that's a werewolf. I don't know if you're gonna be able to convince me otherwise. At number 1, the Costa Rica creature. Now, I spent a long time looking at some weird CCTV footage, door cam, blurry cell phone footage, trying to find something just weird and freaky to show you all for this video, and well, I think I've saved the best for last here. This footage was captured from a ring light security camera, and it's maybe one of the scariest things I've seen in a hot minute. Now, you take a little look-see for me, and I don't blame you at all if you need to scroll down to hide in the comments. It's safe there. Huh? What'd I tell you? Pretty weird clip? We can see a dog barking repeatedly at something outside, and at first I rolled my eyes because I thought, hey, this isn't anything supernatural, this is just 2 dogs barking at each other. Until I watched the clip over again and I realized what the dog was barking at is absolutely not a dog breed from this planet. No, we see something absolutely horrifying crawling around looking like a spider, like it just came out of Dead Space. The way the dog is barking really makes me stressed too. It's not just barking at something odd, it is freaking out and shrieking and screaming, and it seems panicked and scared and trying to let everyone in the neighborhood know that something deeply evil is around. This is one of those things where I look at it and rationally I want to say that this is just someone messing around, having fun, doing something for views, trying to get viral on TikTok. I'm having trouble being rational here. I just fully believe this might actually be a demonic entity that someone caught on camera, and personally I am extremely glad it is absolutely nowhere near me. Now, if you need me, I need to go watch some videos of, like, I don't know, cats being funny or something. Can we throw maybe a cat or 2 up at the end? And a nice cute little guy, little palate cleanser for everybody.
In 5th place, we have a spotting near an abandoned house. Just a few weeks ago, Logan Pierce and some of his friends decided to make the 30-minute drive from their place to the Pine Barrens. Not looking for anything in particular, but in hopes of finding proof of the existence of the Jersey Devil. The drive took them down Bulltown Road near Batso Village, a place rumored to be home to previous sightings. They passed by an old abandoned house and originally thought nothing of it. After a while of not seeing much aside from deer and the occasional owl, the group decided to head back the way they came and call it a night. As they passed by that old house again, they saw what they described as bright green eyes peering out a window and made the quick decision to drive up to the house, but then the eyes disappeared. A strange noise then caught the attention of Logan and his friend who was in the front seat next to him. She was shining her flashlight around and caught sight of something swooping over the car, describing it as darker in color and larger than any bird she knew of. By the time the group could react to it, nothing was around. They all left the car to investigate, but all that could be found were hoof prints in the sandy soil that were too big to be those of a deer and too small to be from a horse. The group eventually left the home that night, but vowed to return again soon to gather more evidence. I wish them luck and safety. In 4th place, we have a spotting from a police officer. Back in February, Officer Brandon Cutler was driving around one evening in Cumberland County and wanted to try and scare his new girlfriend. Real great move, pal. Describing him and his girlfriend as an adventurous couple, they would always joke about trying to find the Jersey Devil, and he decided to drive to the Pine Barrens region. It was around 2 a.m. They were the only car around for miles. No kidding. And the area they found themselves in was mostly full of forestation, with a few houses here and there. Brendan started seeing movement on the right side of the vehicle, partially from the front, right in front of the headlights, but always on the right side. When he first spotted the creature, he thought he was hallucinating from lack of sleep, and I would have thought the same thing. 2 a.m.? As someone who considers a 7 a.m. wake up sleeping in, I'm yawning at the thought. His girlfriend also spotted the being, and jointly they've described it as 4 to 5 feet tall, covered in brown hair similar to a goat's, and it had black wings that appeared to be leathery or smooth. They were unable to distinguish a head or a face, and when they attempted to drive closer to it, the creature flapped its wings and took off and disappeared. They turned the flashlights on their phones, got out of the car, and tried looking around the forest for it, only to find nothing. Brenda was quoted as saying, "I'm a lawman in South Jersey and have seen some strange and crazy things in my time on the streets, but this is definitely the creepiest." Now, unlike Logan and his friends I mentioned a moment ago, Brendan and his girlfriend have no intention of returning to the area for more. Thank goodness. In third place, we have a bachelor party gone wrong. David Bennett describes himself as living around 15 to 20 minutes from the infamous Leeds Point birthplace of the Jersey Devil, having grown up going to the Pines often to ride dirt bikes, explore old abandoned houses, and paintball. I've played paintball before, and my only memory from it is getting a really bad wall to my legs, so all the power to you, dude. As a local resident, he described the local Jersey Devil lore with simply that in his life, never taking it for more than a local legend. As a teenager, he had investigated the old Leeds house where the previous 2 spottings took place, saying that it was just a crumbling foundation. Nothing spooky here. Now for his buddy Max's bachelor party, all of their friends agreed that a full weekend ride and camp out would be perfect. And David was thrilled, having just finished restoring a bike that he wanted to test out. And hey, that sounds like a chill party to me. The group drove out to the area and found a clearing that was quite odd, with no plants, and seemed like the perfect area to set up camp for the weekend, without disturbing nature. Now at the time, David was unaware of the concept of the Devil's Tramping Grounds, which are cleared circles and heavily forested areas where demons like to frequent. Just, a piece of useful information for anyone looking to recreate what's about to happen. The party set up and rode all day, partied all night, with nothing strange occurring that first evening. The next morning, the sky was overcast and looked like it was going to stay that way for the day, ruining the guys' plans, but they opted to try and make the most of the trip. They partied the best they could that day, coming and going from their campsite, which was easy to find from the patch of gravel at the entrance to the area. That night, most of the group had passed out around midnight, exhausted from the constant partying. Around 3 a.m., nature calling woke David up, and he stumbled over to the gravel patch to take care of business. As he sobered up, he noticed that the area, known for loud animal noises at night, was eerily silent. He originally assumed he had spooked the wildlife, but started to get the feeling that he was being watched. As he tried to shake off that feeling, he heard a sound he described as hooves clopping on that gravel patch, and saw the silhouette of something resembling a deer in the bright moonlight. He soon realized it wasn't an actual deer when the creature shifted its head and the moon revealed a puzzled look on its face, along with glowing, beady red eyes. David's logic was that if he moved slowly enough, maybe the creature wouldn't spot him. So he tried inching back towards the tent and accidentally crushed a beer can with his foot, startling the entity. As it fled, David heard the clapping of hooves and what he described as the sound of a huge bird taking off. He tried looking for footprints in the dark, but a massive downpour of rain started, washing away any possible evidence before he could capture it. Come morning, David was just trying to forget about the entire night. In second place, we have a backyard spotting. Chad Lynch is another fellow who was born and raised in the South Jersey area, currently living roughly 20 minutes away from the old Leeds house in Pine Barrens that, I've mentioned a few times today, which is the birthplace of, the Jersey Devil. Having lived in his home for 29 years, he's described the wooded area as having plenty of creepy things that he has seen and heard, but this time period was the weirdest yet. This past January, he was out shoveling the path in his backyard when he came across hoofprints in the snow, but they didn't resemble regular deer hoofprints. They were spaced as if the creature walked on 2 legs and had the stride of Andre the Giant. He followed them as far as they led, but they ended suddenly, appearing as if whatever it was had flown off. That night, his Ring doorbell captured footage of a creature he described looking like, you guessed it, the Jersey Devil. When he rushed outdoors, he heard unnatural noises, similar to wild pigs, and assorted screeching. Trying to see into the forest from his deck, he saw red eyes looking back at him, and made the decision to retreat back into his home. Can't say I blame him, it was probably freezing out. Chad has mentioned hearing the same squealing and screeching occasionally at night since, but hasn't tried to hunt for the creature since the incident. Good on ya for having common sense, my dude. And finally, in first place, we have a case of teenage bravery, or stupidity if you ask me. Johnny Ramsey is not the first member of his family to have spotted the Jersey Devil, with his grandma, dad, and boss at work having shared their own tales of spotting with him, so he grew up unafraid to spot the creature. His logic was that since the Jersey Devil was always described as shy, somewhat benign of a creature that was never aggressive and only ever visible enough for a witness to catch a small glimpse of him, it was probably something to feel sorry for instead of fearing. Sure, yeah, that makes sense. Back in February, he was working on a farm with his brother's girlfriend, Janice, who didn't have a driver's license, and being a very good person, he would drive her back and forth to work every day. Such a good Samaritan. The pair often worked late evening shifts, so poor Johnny would be driving Janice home in pitch black conditions, and her home was very deep in the forest in the middle of nowhere. One night, after dropping her off, Johnny was driving along the gravel road on the last stretch before the main highway when he was overcome with the feeling of something or someone watching him, which led him to pull over and stop his car. He was smart enough to keep his doors locked at first, and he kept a large wrench under his seat for safety that he was confident he could use if need be. He sat there for a while, trying to calm down, and was looking around to see if he could spot what might have been bothering him in the woods or on the road. Leaving the car, he ventured a few steps away, trying once again to see past the large trees in the area, but spotted nothing weird, and so he returned to his car. He started driving slowly down the road and noticed movement from the tops of one of the tallest trees. Stopping the car yet again, he stared in that direction, trying to get his eyes to focus in the dark. Once his eyes had finally adjusted, he described what he saw as something larger than a man with a huge head, sitting in a half-crouched position as if it was ready to spring from its hind legs at any given moment. It was sadly too dark to make out any other specifics against the dark sky. Deep in his state of concentration at staring at whatever it was in those bushes, Johnny accidentally let his foot slip from the clutch and his car stalled the engine. And this is how we find out he was driving a standard and not an automatic. The creature's head whipped around suddenly at the noise and took off in one swift motion. As it was taking off, Johnny didn't see any wings on its back, but heard a large whooshing noise like large wings would make. In addition to hearing this, Johnny was able to make out some very powerful looking legs that were bent at the knees, kind of like a horse's legs would be. Since the car was now stalled and quiet, he was able to hear a loud screech and a whoosh of air above him that grew fainter within seconds. Whatever this thing was, it was fast and it was powerful. As the creature took off, the bushes on the tree almost bent in half, thrashing and swaying for a long time after it left. Johnny panicked, managed to get the car started, and drove back to Janice's house in a tizzy, not even remembering to close the car's door as he barged into the home and started babbling about what he had seen. And Janice's dad calmly told him that he must have seen the Jersey Devil. He drove back with Johnny to the spot where he'd seen it and confirmed there was definitely a disturbance in the bushes on that side of the road. He told Johnny that he'd had quite a few sightings of the Jersey Devil on his land before, but he had never said anything to his wife or his daughters so they wouldn't get freaked out. Big whoopsie on Johnny's front for that one. And that brings us to the end of today's list and the official addition of Pine Barrens to the Never Travel Here list on my phone. I swear, with the stuff I talk about with you folks out there, that list is growing by the day.
Number 5 on this list is a story from a man named Ryan Eastaugh. Ryan doesn't live there anymore, but he used to live in Bermuda, and that's where his demonic encounter took place. He was young at the time that he got his message, only 9 years old at that time, still living at home with his parents. One evening when he was lying in bed, he found it extremely hard to go to sleep, which was strange because he was a 9-year-old and usually he got into bed and slept like a baby. But he remembers that night that he couldn't sleep because he felt a strange sense of foreboding. Like that strange feeling like something's going to happen, or that you forgot something. You aren't prepared for something, a general sense of anxiety. He lay awake in his bed, staring up at the ceiling until he started to feel cold. A sudden chill immediately in the air. He said that it felt as if the room dropped by about 20 degrees. Scared and cold, Ryan wrapped himself in his blankets as tightly as he could. It was at this point though that the ceiling started to morph. The shadows turned into the walls of the ceiling and it started moving in unsettling ways as if something was coming out at him. The shadows formed what looked to be a dark, devilish complexion, but it kept moving so that it was never one thing for very long. Petrified and frozen where he was, Ryan could only stare up at the ceiling and hope that it didn't hurt him. The shadowy face was fixated on Ryan and held him down with its stare. Then, from apparently nothing, the shadowy ceiling figure said, and Ryan remembers these words to this day, "Next time will be the last time." And that was it. The demon left, the chill in the air disappeared, and Ryan was left in his bed alone. He obviously told his parents about it, but they didn't believe him, saying that it was probably a nightmare. The thing about Ryan's story though, is that after a while, he wasn't scared of these words, but actually thankful. If next time will be the last time, then I better make that time pretty freaking great. Whatever that may be in reference to. Now he's a man and leads a successful life, living with the mentality that today could be his last day, so I better make it bloody awesome. Number 4 is from a woman named Kimberly Hagen. She had a run-in with a demon in a very old apartment building that she used to live in. Now, Kimberly occasionally dabbled with a spirit box and tried to communicate with past loved ones. It seems like this wasn't the proper location to do that though, because during this process, she awakened a demon. She says that at nighttime her bed would shake and she would be woken up to a nasty, dark, crow-like voice. The voice would speak to her and tell her some very nasty things, often saying that nobody loved her and that she was better off dead. It also tried to spark some unhealthy addictions. Kimberly said that she used to drink a lot to the point that she was ruining her life. However, after some solid rehabilitation, she managed to get clean. This demonic voice would continually tempt her with alcohol, telling her that she's better off drunk. Basically, any negative thought or habit you can think of, this voice would echo it to Kimberly in her apartment. She tried to go to spiritualists and seek their advice, ask them if there's anything that she could do to fend off this demon or get rid of it from her home. They tried a few different things, but nothing seemed to work or keep it out for good. After a few months of living like this, she couldn't take it anymore and she had to move and leave the demon behind her. She feels bad for whoever moved in after her, but at the end of the day, she had to look out for her own well-being. Number 3 on this list is from a woman named Bianca. In 2013, Bianca was living in New York City. This was before the days that Uber was a thing, so taxis were still the way to go. One Saturday morning, Bianca was on her way to meet her friends for brunch across town. She hailed a taxi and got in. The person driving was an elderly man who, based on his accent, sounded pretty Italian. They shared a decent conversation with one another right up until the intersection of 18th and 65th. The light was out here and there was a buildup of traffic. This was also a special intersection to Bianca because it was at 65th and 18th that her father got hit by a car and died 7 years prior. Then all of a sudden at this intersection, in the monotony of the traffic, time slowed down. The car slowed, the sound slowed, everything got slower. It felt to Bianca like she just entered the movie Inception and she was in some dreamlike state. The old Italian man's head then swiveled around without the rest of his body moving. His face wasn't his actual face though. It was the face of her dead father. Absolutely stunned, Bianca started to tear up and was completely shell-shocked. Her father's face looked at her and said, "Bianca, move. Hell is not your fate, but you must move." The face turned back around and time started up again. Everything exactly how it was a minute ago. The Italian man's face, everything, the cars, all of it. Absolutely bawling though, Bianca got out of the car and had to throw up. She couldn't go to her brunch and she had to go home, walking the entire way. To this day, she doesn't know whether it was a demon, the ghost of her father, or what it was, but it shook her to her core, and she's never gone near that intersection or taken a taxi ever again. Number 2 on this list is a story posted 4 years ago by a man named Donald Wesson. Donald accounts how several years ago, he was 11 years old and he had a friend named Ashley. Ashley had recently moved to his town from Wisconsin. She left Wisconsin initially though due to a pretty bad tragedy that occurred to her family. Her house caught on fire and her mother and sister both didn't make it out alive. Only her father, and her brother survived. This obviously created for a pretty rough upbringing, but Ashley as a whole was still a pretty nice girl and wasn't as damaged as some may suspect. Donald says though that he started to notice that when she came to school, she would have red marks on her ankles and her lower legs. He thought that maybe she could be getting abused at home, but after meeting her father and brother, realized quickly that that wasn't the case. One evening when he was over at Ashley's with another friend named Eli, they were all having a sleepover. They went to bed and roughly 10 minutes into going to sleep, Ashley got up out of bed and went down the stairs. She was gone for about 15 minutes, and both of the boys roused themselves out of curiosity. They were going to go downstairs to check on her when she appeared in the doorway. She was holding a large butcher knife in her hands. Both Donald and Eli started to freak out a little bit and started trying to get Ashley's attention. But rather than show them any interest at all, Ashley takes the knife and starts stabbing the wall, chanting out some strange language as she does it. Scared for their safety, Eli starts to bawl, but this grabs Ashley's attention. She drops the knife and gets down on all fours and rapidly crawls to Eli. Donald very quickly kicks the demon that used to be his friend right in the face and grabs Eli and runs out of the house. They wait outside the home for roughly 20 minutes, but nobody comes after them. Then, very carefully, they head back inside, and Ashley is now fast asleep where she was before. Apparently, Ashley has no memory of that experience at all. I suppose this story was less about a message and more just about a scary run-in. However, actions speak louder than words, and I think that those actions were saying to get out. Now, number 1 is actually a story from a viewer that commented on the first part of this video. The viewer's name is Anna Kelly, so shout out to you, Anna. Thank you for commenting. Now, I do want to warn you guys, this story, from my understanding, is about the Incubus demon, so it's not pretty. Anna writes, "This happened in 2008, and I still remember every terrible detail. I'd just gotten into bed and covered with a sheet when I heard a noise at the foot of the bed, the right corner. The mattress made a creaking sound, like it does when somebody climbs into bed. I looked, but saw nothing. But I felt it crawling closer. I closed my eyes tightly, hoping that it would go away. Then, I felt the sheet being pulled off of my body. I opened my eyes, and I saw the sheet being pulled by nothing. Then, the putrid smell of sulfur and rotten flesh hit my nose. It was gag-inducing. It could singe the hairs in your nostrils. Then, I saw it. It was in the form of a male, so I'll just call it he. Anyway, he was 7 feet tall and massive with 3 arms and 2 legs. His skin looked like layers of charred bits. He had only a few sprigs of coarse-looking brittle hair. His teeth were pointed and slimy, and his breath was a lot worse close up. He had no eyes, just black holes. I looked into those black holes. All of a sudden, all my emotions left me. I felt like nothing. I can't explain what it feels like to feel nothing. Then I felt the heavy weight of him on me. He pinned my arms at my sides. He put one claw-like hand over my mouth and said in an evil growl, "No one will hear you scream. No one can help you now." I found that I couldn't make any noise at all. I don't need to go into too much detail about what happened next, but it felt very cold and unforgiving. Well, the next morning when I got out of bed, I noticed my inner thighs were very sore, and there were red scratch marks on them. No human could leave those kinds of scratches with their nails. And it wasn't me. I'm a nail biter, nasty habit, I know. But that's the one and only time I've been attacked like that. It was my fault though. I have a heart necklace that I wanted to use to see if anyone passed away in my apartment. I let the necklace hang and went through the alphabet. It would be stiff as a board, but when I got to the letter J, it started moving. Clockwise, I think. Anyway, it spelled out Joanne. I was attacked not long after messing around with that stupid junk. I figured at least it wasn't a Ouija board. It took me a while, but with prayer and faith, I was able to cast out those evil things. Of course, there are still many other demons slithering around us in this world, and some target me for a different reason, though now I know how to fight them. And after that attack, I will not allow any conjuring items, tarot cards, crystals, etc. in my home. I definitely do not want to go through that ever again. No one should have to do that. And no, you are absolutely right. Nobody should ever have to go through that. That is quite the story. Anna, all I can say is that I really appreciate you feeling comfortable with sharing that. So thank you. Number 5 on this list is Saint Dunstan. Saint Dunstan was an archbishop who had a lot of encounters with the devil. A clerk of Oxford says, "One day as evening was coming, an old man appeared at his window and asked him to make a chalice for him. Setting aside what he was working on, Dunstan agreed to the request and set to work. But as he was working, his visitor began to change shape. One moment he was an old man, then a young boy, then a seductive woman. Dunstan realized that his guest was the devil, but pretending not to notice, he went on with his task. He took up the tongs from among his tools and laid them in the fire, waiting until they were red hot. Then, pulling them out of the fire, he turned round and seized the devil by the nose with the tongs. The devil struggled and screamed, but Dunstan held on until at last he felt he had triumphed. Then he threw the devil out of his cell and it fled, running down the street and crying, 'Woe is me, what has that bald devil done to me? Look at me, a poor wretch. Look how he has tortured me.' Many people heard and saw this, and the following day they came to Dunstan and asked what had happened. He said to them, 'These are the tricks of devils who try to trap us with their snares whenever they can. But if we remain firm in the service of Christ, we can easily defeat them with his help, and they will flee from us in confusion.'" That wasn't the only encounter that St. Dunstan had with the devil. In fact, he became known for having run-ins with Satan quite frequently. Several times, Dunstan swore that the devil himself came as an animal. One day he appeared as a wolf and then changed into a fox right before his eyes. He tried to make St. Dunstan stop performing his prayers, but St. Dunstan's focus would not be broken, and eventually Satan gave up. These stories were told all across the land and are still told today to try and enlighten people about how Satan could attack you. He doesn't always appear as the red-horned evil beast that he's often portrayed as. Oftentimes he could show himself as an innocent little fox, and we need to be ready if he does. Number 4 on this list is Houska Castle. Houska Castle might be the literal entrance to hell, guys, meaning that Satan has been chilling here for quite some time. All That's Interesting says, as Bohemian chronicler Václav Hašek detailed in his Czech Chronicle in 1541, the first known structure at the site was a small wooden fort in the 9th century. Hašek also recounted local folklore that described the emergence of a crack in the cliff. It revealed a seemingly endless abyss that villagers deemed an entrance to hell. Locals were terrified of the half-human hybrids that began to crawl out of the hole at night and tear livestock apart. Fearful of turning into these demonic entities themselves, villagers avoided the rocky entrance. They tried to block it with stones, but the abyss allegedly gobbled up anything they dropped into it, refusing to be filled. King Ottokar II of Bohemia had the Gothic structure built sometime between 1253 and 1278. Oddly, the original construction of the castle omitted stairs from the courtyard to the upper floors, and most of the structure's defenses were built facing inwards. It was as if the purpose of the castle wasn't to keep invaders out, but rather to keep something trapped within. Over the years, there have been tons of encounters with Satan here and his minions. I mean, they literally built an entire castle to try and stop them from coming, but that's how bad it got. This might be some of the clearest proof I've seen, and maybe the best entry on this list when it comes to convincing me. Building a castle would have cost a lot of money. When big sums of money start getting thrown around, that's when I start thinking that this could be legit. Number 3 on this list is Father Gabriel Amhurst. This man was one of the most prolific exorcists ever, and he came face to face with Satan. The NY Post says, in 1997, when a young, slim peasant man was escorted into the small room where Father Gabriel Amhurst conducted his exorcisms in Rome, the priest felt immediately confronted by evil. Amhurst said he asked for the help of Jesus, and the young man began to curse and spit, using English instead of his native Italian. His curses and threats were aimed solely at the exorcist. Then he began spitting at him and preparing to attack him physically, writes Marcello Stanizone in The Devil is Afraid of Me, the life and work of the world's most famous exorcist. Screaming and howling, the demon burst forth and looked straight at him, drooling saliva from the young man's mouth. Amhurst said he returned fire with prayers and other ritual recitations, demanding that the demon reveal its name. Unclean spirit, Amhurst bellowed. Whoever you are and all your companions who possess this servant of God, I command you, tell me your name, the day and the hour of your damnation. The man fixed him with a glare and snarled, I am Lucifer. Literally, the father was face to face with Satan right there. He went on to perform one of the most harrowing exorcisms of his life, one that lasted weeks. Eventually, he was able to rid the person of this devil and let the young man go on with his life. But wow. I'm no exorcist, so I don't know what it's like, but I imagine that they have nightmares of having an exorcism go like that, where the person reveals themselves as Satan. Father Gabriel Amhurst was the best of the best, though, and managed to win that fight. Number 2 on this list is Will Carroll. Will Carroll is a drummer from the heavy metal band Death Angel. Seems like a fitting name for the band considering what happened to Will. Global News says after spending nearly 2 weeks in a coma fighting COVID-19, Death Angel drummer Will Carroll has revealed that during his battle with the virus, he had bizarre dreams of the afterlife where he would be sent to hell and meet Satan. Carroll tested positive for the novel coronavirus shortly after the conclusion of Death Angel's most recent European tour. The illness left him in a critical state where he was put on a ventilator while lying unconscious in a California Pacific Medical Center hospital bed for 12 days before recovering. In an exclusive interview with the San Francisco Chronicle published on May 15th, just days after the musician's 47th birthday, Carroll revealed that in his dreams, the devil would punish him for the deadly sin of sloth. The musician said Satan would transform him into a creature similar to that of Star Wars Jabba the Hutt, and that he would vomit blood until he ultimately had a heart attack. Well, that sounds like literally the worst time ever. My dude got put in a coma from COVID, and then Satan came to him and turned him into a slug and made him cough blood. Obviously not the best time there for my man Will. He was absolutely convinced that this happened to him though, that it wasn't just all in his head, but Satan really did do that. And even though his body was lying in a hospital bed, he was still going through all of it. Finally, number 1 on this list is George Lukins. George Lukins was a young man that was living in England. On May 31st of 1778, he started to experience some pretty unusual symptoms and didn't feel too good. He went to the doctor and they tried a few things. However, nothing was working, and by all accounts, it looked as if George was getting worse. He was having serious convulsions, and getting through his everyday life was becoming increasingly difficult. After trying the doctor for a while with no success, he turned to the church. It became clear to the priest he approached that George was infested with some type of strong and powerful demon, and that they would need to perform an exorcism. This wasn't an everyday, ordinary exorcism though. The priest could sense a strong power here and needed help. He called in 6 other priests to perform a super powerful exorcism and get this demon out for good. Well, turns out this was a good idea because the demon was Satan. During the exorcism, George started bending the laws of physics and floating in the air. A voice that wasn't his started echoing around the room, claiming that he was Satan and everyone in the room was going to hell. After several hours of fighting back and forth with the devil, eventually the priests won and rid George of him. George actually went on to live a healthy life after that, and his illness was cured.
In at number 5, we have The Resident. This is a true story posted by Redditor McElmary 3 years ago. It all started when their friend moved into a farmhouse. The house had a barn and the barn had a basement. The basement had a set of stairs that led to nowhere. The family moved into the home as it was on the market for less than it should be worth. They saw it as a steal. They later found out that the home's previous owner had taken their own life in the barn. They left behind a letter that read, "Resident told me to." Their friend refused to visit the barn. They were not even curious to walk around its walls. One night their friends thought it would be a good idea to hold a seance. They admit that they were young and rather foolish to think this was a good idea. They set up everything by the instructions they saw online. They had a circle of candles around the group and they all held hands. They were sat next to their friend who lived there during the seance. The group asked if there was someone there and if they can show themselves. Their friend squeezed their hand tighter and tighter. She then turned her head and said to them, "Let's go to the barn. Someone there wants to talk to us." They immediately broke the circle and blew out the candles. They turned on the lights and looked at their friend. The friend fell out of their trance and forgot what happened. To this day, they never remembered that night. 1 week after their seance, the friend's dad was found in the barn. He had taken his own life. Beside him was a letter that read, "I'm sorry, I had to listen," as if there was an entity telling him to do that to himself. The Redditor explained maybe it was just a weird coincidence. They did not want to believe what had happened. It does seem there was some dark entity in that barn telling the occupants of the home to do horrible things. Coming in at number 4, we have Ariana Grande. It is not just ordinary people like you and me that have supernatural encounters. Sometimes celebrities can have encounters with demons and otherworldly forces. In 2013, Ariana Grande told Complex about an encounter she had with a demonic spirit. The magazine tried to steer the conversation to music and her personal life, but she insisted on telling the world her story. She admitted that it left her shaken and scared. She won't try to encounter them again. She told them that her incident happened while in Kansas City on her visit to Skull Cemetery. She explained this cemetery is known as one of the 7 gates of hell on Earth. The Pope won't even fly through the airspace above the graveyard due to its dark energy. She was visiting the cemetery with her friends to investigate the claims of its paranormal nature. She said when they entered the area, her and her group of friends could smell sulfur. This is one of the main signs that you are in the presence of a demon. They also noticed a few flies appeared inside of their car. She took this to be the second sign of a demon entity being nearby. She did not let these signs stop her. They entered the cemetery and started to walk around and take pictures. Once they left, they reviewed the pictures that they had taken. Ariana had a photo of a gravestone with 3 distinct faces. She said the faces were textbook demons. She wanted to share this with the world and attempted to send the photo to her manager. When she tried to send the picture, it came up with an error message. "This file can't be sent. It's 666 megabytes." She said after this, weird things started to happen to her. She heard whispers in her home when she was alone. She found no reason for these voices. One night she saw a massive dark cloud above her head. She woke up suddenly and tried to clear the cloud, but when she attempted to touch it, it disappeared. Scared about what might happen next, Ariana deleted the picture. She has vowed to never go back to the cemetery. In at number 3, I was possessed. One Reddit user told the story of how they were possessed. They don't remember any of what happened. They were only a baby when all of this went down. They started off their story by explaining that they were a very calm and quiet baby. When they were 2 years old, it all started on one random night. They were lying in their crib staring upwards, when suddenly they started screaming like crazy. They then started running in circles on their side while screaming. It was not a nightmare as they were awake while it was happening. It was also not seen as a tantrum or them looking for attention, as they were clearly terrified. This continued to happen every night for 6 months. They would behave like this until dawn. When dawn hit, they would go back to sleep as if nothing happened. Their parents took them to many different churches and priests to see if anyone could help. Nothing worked. This went on continuously for 6 months. The family decided to immigrate after the 6 months, meaning they would be moving home. Once they left home, it stopped. It never once happened again. Everyone in the family was aware of what had happened. They chose to never tell them what happened. They lived in fear of the possession taking hold of them again. The family had decided that the less they knew, the better. They thought that if they knew, they would be more vulnerable to it happening again. They were lucky to escape the demon. Hopefully the people who bought the house didn't have the same experience. In at number 2, we have Blue Mountains. One woman told her story of an encounter she had in the Blue Mountains in Australia. She said that she frequently went bushwalking. She would usually go with her dad, but for shorter walks she would go alone. Being a woman walking alone in the woods, she would take knives with her for protection, but she always felt safe going alone. One day she decided she wanted a couple of days of peace and quiet in the mountains by herself. So she decided to take an overnight walk. The walk was fine, she had no issues. She often saw other walkers going in the opposite direction. As it got darker, she picked a little spot just off from the track to set up her tent for the night. As night fell, everything seemed fine and she drifted off to sleep. She was awoken abruptly not long after by what sounded like someone running past her tent on the track, but it went past too fast with too little steps to be anything human. The force shook her like a train had just passed by the outside of her tent. She felt uneasy but thought it must be a tree falling or something else that would ease her mind, even if it didn't really make sense for the appearance she just had. She drifted back off to sleep. The next morning she had her breakfast, packed up her tent and got ready to carry on her walk. She started her walk again. She again passed a few people. After that she was alone for maybe an hour and a half. She then heard a stick breaking from behind her. She said it sounded like it came from behind her on the left, away from the track. When she turned around, she was scared to death. She felt a fear like nothing she has ever felt before. A fair distance away in the bushes, something was standing there and looking directly at her. She wanted to believe it was a person, but she knew this was nothing human. It was a very tall figure, around 9 feet tall. Its skin was a dark grey colour, its eyes were large and dark, its arms and legs were very long. It did not have a mouth, nose or ears, just large black hole eyes. She had tears rolling down her face, but her feet were frozen in place. She stared at the creature for what felt like a lifetime. She felt filled with dread. The fear kept building until finally she broke her gaze and ran. She ran as fast as she could until she caught up with the other walkers. She broke down as soon as she saw them. They were shocked when they saw her. She was clearly distraught. She told them what happened, but no one could understand the fear she felt or what she saw. She believed she saw a demon. She can't find any other explanation for what she saw. She didn't go walking alone ever again. And finally, coming in at number 1, we have Amy Stamatis. Amy Stamatis is a woman from Arkansas who in 2019 was left paralyzed from the waist down after she fell from the secondary story of her home. This might seem like an accident, but this is very different. 7 months before the incident, Amy's life was much different. She lived with her husband and worked as a med-flight nurse at the local medical center. Her last shift at the hospital changed her life. She was on her shift when a burn patient came in for her to treat. She wheeled him in on a stretcher and completed a report on his wounds. The next thing she knew, she was wandering the halls of the emergency room. Aimlessly, she had forgotten how to do her job or why she was there. There were clear blank spots in her memory that she can't recall to this day. She left the hospital to never return. Amy told her husband she felt like she was having a nervous breakdown. She could not make sense of her own mind. She saw a lot of doctors, but no one could tell her what was wrong. She then started to hear voices. The voices were telling her to harm herself in different ways. She tried to ignore the voices. The doctors gave her various medications, but nothing helped to quiet the voices. Then one day, the voices told her to climb out of her second-story window. She was sitting there when she was pushed. She's adamant that she did not jump. She felt the voices as a force pushed her from the window. After her fall, she was lying in the hospital when she was visited by a woman. This woman had previously claimed to have healed many terminally ill patients, as well as successfully conducting many exorcisms. The woman saw something in Amy that no one else had. She said that she could see the demons in that room with Amy. She could also hear the same voices that were talking to her for all those months. Amy had not met this woman before or asked her to come. The woman claimed she simply felt compelled to visit her. The woman prayed over Amy and brought anointing oil to wipe over her forehead. She cast out the demons. Amy's friend said she looked different after that, like her brain had cleared and she was back to her old self. She never heard the voices again. It's unknown where this demon came from or where it went. It seems to have transferred from the burned patient to Amy. It seemed to be a pattern of the demon making its victim hurt itself before transferring onto the next. Hopefully it was cast out for good. Amy remained positive about having her life back, happy she was able to survive the demon.
Number 5. A gnome? Is a gnome a demon? I don't know, I find most gnomes benevolent, actually, but they could be. Our next clip looks like something out of the start of a low-budget horror movie, bit of an A24 vibe. I started watching this clip, and then as soon as it got going, I literally pressed my nose to my computer screen, so I hope you do the same. The clip was posted to the subreddit r/humanoid encounters. I definitely recommend it if you're into this sort of thing. There's a lot of really good humanoid encounters on there. And the poster explained that this has happened to their relatives, but they don't know what's going on. What we can see in the clip is bizarre. Someone is outside on their front porch, shining a light into the darkness, trying to find what is stalking them on their property. It can be a little hard to see, but behind the big rock, we see what looks like teeny tiny little hands peering out, trying not to be seen, playing a little game of Gnome hide and seek. Now, it can be hard to make out what exactly is going on in this clip, but it almost seems too like there might be more than one of those little creepy crawlers wiggling around back there. Now, the original poster suggested that these creatures are indigenous folklore of little people, which I think this is pretty interesting. Is a myth that is almost ubiquitous across the globe. Pretty much every people's, Ireland, Greece, the Philippines, New Zealand, Indonesia, and so many more, all have stories of gnomes or elves or little mischievous people creeping about in the night. I just find it interesting that the whole planet all has that myth. Are they all wrong, or are gnomes real? Now, to put on our Scully hat for a second, get a little dowdy, this could extremely easily be somebody playing along for a prank, or someone just hiding behind a rock playing with a doll, poking it out. The only evidence we have that this is a gnome is OP's word that they swear this is a close family member and they wouldn't do this sort of thing. And you can go through the YouTube channel, you see it's mostly just family videos, so that does make sense. So I toss it over to you, my beloved YouTube commenter gang. You guys keep me young. I love those comments. Little people creeping around, or is this just a tall tale? Woof. I spent all night working on that pun. And if you're looking for more videos of ghosts and goblins and gnomes with this guy talking over them, I've got lots of that for you on our channel. Hit subscribe so you don't miss any of it. Make sure you ring that bell so you doubly don't miss any of it. But if you really cared about me, no, I'm not saying you do. You do it at the end of this video so you can watch all the other demons caught on camera first, because I got 4 more coming. Number 4, Dogman. Coming up next is this clip that was making the rounds around the spookier sides of the internet of an Instagram user going live. The user was complaining that he'd seen something strange earlier in the day, referring to a Dogman that he thought he had seen. Now, that is different from a werewolf. A Dogman is a fairly popular cryptid that gets mentioned every now and again, kind of like a Goatman or a Mothman deal. It's like a bipedal wolf, but it's not a werewolf, okay? If you think it's a werewolf, that's a different thing. Anyway, this guy was talking on live and heard something strange outside and went to go check. Let's go with him and let's go watch the clip. Now, we can roll it again if you didn't see it, but at around a minute into the clip, when the user going live hears something strange and goes in to check on what it was, we see something rush by, if only for a second, that does not look like it's from this world at all. Looks like a tall creature running by on its hind legs. And I know it does give off a werewolfy vibe. I get it. It looks like a werewolf. I get it. But it's a Dogman. It's totally different. I don't have the time to explain the difference, but a Dogman and a werewolf are totally different. Now here's the thing. Either this video is one of the best fakes I've ever seen, and I watch a ton of supernatural videos, so I like to think I got an eye for it. It's got a great budget and actor who really knows how to sell a scare, or this is something that actually happened to a real terrified guy. It being on Instagram Live gives it a little bit more credibility, you know? It's harder to fake things in camera. On live, it doesn't really seem like someone in a costume, it just looks like it was a Dogman caught on camera. Okay, so realist, Scully mode, I don't know if I have one. Molder mode, that's a Dogman. That's a Dogman all the way down. Why don't you all let me know down below what we think is going on down there, and also if you have some insight on the werewolf Dogman debate, lend a hand. I'm fighting a losing battle here. Number 3, strange things in Montana. Montana is sometimes called the treasure state. All the gold and silver that have been uncovered there, and also for lesser reasons for all the wild cryptid stories that come out of it. For seekers of the supernatural, Montana is a treasure trove, a real treasure state. Now, Deer Lodge is a city in Montana, and it's purported to be a hotbed of supernatural occurrences. Rumored to be home to creatures that defy classification and scientific convention and avoid the trail cams. Until recently, a local rancher from Deer Lodge caught something bizarre on his land when something tripped the motion sensor on his trail camera. Now, the black and white footage shows a blindingly bright, glowing humanoid with what looks like an oversized and oblong head walking bizarrely in front of the camera. My first thought is that Simpsons episode has Mulder and Scully guest starring. The Simpsons episode with Mulder and Scully, where Mr. Burns is glowing green through the woods. That's what I'm thinking of when I see this. Now, this trail cam was miles away from any roads or trails, so there shouldn't be anybody creeping around. But there is. The rancher returned to the site of the photo and stood in the same spot and tried to mimic the composition of what he saw. When he posed himself against and compared the other image, he came out looking pretty human, compared to the sort of odd alien proportions of the glowing being, which also happened to be devoid of any features. So what was it? Now, some believe it to be extraterrestrial life. Popular. The show Ancient Aliens, the most reputable name in alien news, took the trail camera footage to analyze for authentication. No alterations, manipulations, inconsistencies were discovered of any kind. Well, I don't know what's going on in there. Others wondered if perhaps the creature could be a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch, or maybe even some other manner of currently undiscovered or unknown cryptid we don't even know about. This could be a first contact scenario. So what do you think was caught on this trail cam? An alien? A Sasquatch? Something dreadfully normal? We may never know, but it's fun to theorize. Number 2. The Sadako Trampoline. Have you ever seen The Ring? Or perhaps the original, Ringu? Probably not, because if you saw The Ring, you would have died roughly 7 days after that, and then you wouldn't be able to watch all of these lovely videos on Top 5 Scary, and I'd miss you too much. The Japanese original is one of my favorite horror movies ever, which you probably notice if you watch this channel a lot, because I crowbar references in to Sadako roughly 3 times a week in these videos. Not my fault, she's the definitive ghost girl, love her in Dead by Daylight, big fan of her. I can't think of many things I've seen in my life half as creepy as that image of Sadako stretching herself out of the TV into the real world, the greasy, long, stringy black hair over her pallid face. Oh, well, exactly for what happens in this next clip, which is just as terrifying. Take a look. At first, it seems like someone filming some summer fun, until you get a better look at what appears to be a figure clad all in white, crawling out from under the trampoline, looking a lot like Sadako crawling out of that TV. Definitely has me scratching my head watching over again. Now, not everyone is as convinced as your easily convinced crypt keeper. One commenter on the video attempted to debunk it as a fake, lending a little bit of insight as a video editor. They said, I'll guess that the ghost figure is a clip of someone standing up, which has been motion tracked and composited in with blurring and opacity. If the shot was stabilized, like I'm guessing it was, this would be fairly straightforward and easy. The camera shake could be added in digitally after the motion tracking is done to really sell the shot. I noticed a blur on what looks like the ghost's back as it stands up, and the jumper's leg passes over the figure, and this blur is whipped away. The clip stops as the figure is moving above the black netting, which is being used to conceal any editing artifacts. Well, okay, so it sounds like they know a lot about video editing, doing infinitely more than I do, and that's all well and reasonable, but could also be a ghost. Who's faking ghost videos? That's too much time in the day to be faking ghost videos. Number 1, the Jersey Devil. The infamous Jersey Devil is said to haunt the Pine Barrens of New Jersey. There are a ton of spins and variations on its origins, and if you're really curious, search Jersey Devil on our channel, nobody else's, okay? Don't need anybody else taking all those views. There's tons and tons of stories about it, but one of the most famous variations is that at a place called Leeds Point, during a thunderstorm in 1735, a Quaker woman gave birth. As the room flickered with light, the wind howled, and the poor mother who'd already raised 12 infants gave birth to the 13th. Now, some say the 13th was cursed by the devil. Some say she cursed it herself. But the story goes that this 13th child would not emerge normal, but with winged shoulders, a horse's head, cloven feet, and a wretched tail. It would soar out into the night, casting itself in the annals of folklore as the Jersey Devil. Now, over the years, there have been tons of sightings of the alleged Jersey Devil. At one point during the early 20th century, sightings would get posted in the hundreds in local newspapers. Now, our local newspapers don't reference cryptids as much as they used to. I'd like us to get back to that. But what we do have is TikTok capturing it, the modern day newspaper. Take a look at this wild footage that has been going viral across TikTok and Instagram. We see the horrific creature perched, and yeah, I'm not in the business of patronizing you. This is a CGI creature. It's impressively rendered, and they did a good job editing into the scene, but that background isn't Jersey, for starters. The problem is they made this look too good. The creature is too well modeled and animated in a broad daylight setting. You know, a really good cryptid fake would have had the camera a lot grainier and blurrier, and I personally would have set it somewhere a little more rural, a little more farmlandy, foresty, but it's entertaining nonetheless, right? I think we're too quick to cry fake when we don't seem to realize these creatures are only as real as if we believe in them. So start believing in them harder, and eventually Mothman will be real. Number 5, the South Shields Poltergeist. Coming up first on this list is going to be the story of the South Shields Poltergeist, a recent case of spiritual harassment. I love a contemporary ghost. We got too many ghosts from the Victorian era or like the 1800s. We don't get nearly enough modern 2000s hauntings. Anyway, in 2005, an anonymous couple living in England had begun reporting seeing strange things happening around the house. Their furniture would be dragged along the ground, which is odd, but stranger things have happened. Doors left open, again, bizarre. But it was when they'd come home and found the chairs stacked on top of each other, they began to suspect that something odd was happening. One evening, the couple was asleep, and the wife had been struck in the back of the head with a doll, one of her son's toys. When she sat upright, she found herself being pelted by an onslaught of toys thrown across the room, as if G.I. Joe himself was leading the offensive. Dolls and blocks thrown at them from the hallway. They tried to cover themselves up with the comforter, but found that whatever entity that had taken up residence in their home had other ideas, and they found themselves pulling back at this invisible force. This horrifying encounter would culminate in the husband waking up and discovering 13 clean red cuts all over his skin, and a burning, searing pain on his back. That same morning, the couple discovered a rocking horse that had been hung from the ceiling, a stuffed rabbit toy sitting at the top of the stairs with a box cutter left between its hands, unsettling things written on the walls. You know, stuff like "Go die" or "You're dead." Very clear cut. I gotta say, this poltergeist really has a flair for the dramatic, setting the scene like this. That's good environmental storytelling with that set dressing. Anyway, enough was enough, and after having lived through enough activity to fill the brunt of one of the bad Conjuring sequels, they contacted a paranormal investigator. These investigators claimed that they made contact with an evil entity that looked like a pure black void that radiated pure evil. Shortly after the investigation crew showed up, however, the haunting seemed to stop. Guess the ghosts got scared when somebody stepped to them. The couple has now gone on to live a normal, happy life, although they claim they have been traumatized by the events. I know I would probably never look at that stuffed rabbit the same way again. And my ghouls and goblins, if you're looking for more good content from us, well, hey, we've got loads and loads of that. We got ghosts, ghouls, aliens, government cover-ups, SCPs, and just about everything freaky under the sun. Let's keep going. Number 4, Kate Morgan. Our next entry is is about the mystery of Kate Morgan, whose death has been a long unsolved mystery in American history. In 1888, the Hotel del Coronado opened in Coronado, California, just across from San Diego. It was as classy as a joint in the late 1880s could be, and upon its completion, it was the largest resort hotel in the world. Our story, though, doesn't start until 1892, when a young woman named Kate Morgan checked into the hotel, one room 304. She had told the desk she was there to meet with her brother, who was a doctor who was treating her for stomach cancer. However, tragically, 5 days after first checking in, Miss Morgan was found dead on the steps of the hotel of what looked to be a self-inflicted gunshot. Now, it would later come out after her death that for whatever reason, the story she had told the staff was all untrue, with an investigation suggesting maybe Morgan had been a con artist. What we did know about her is that she'd been married to a postal worker from Nebraska named Tom Morgan, and that Kate was believed to be visiting San Diego to visit her brother, who was a gambler, not a doctor. But, you know, they probably pulled in similar amounts of money. Doctors didn't even think that Morgan's gunshot wound was self-inflicted, as the bullet retrieved from the autopsy hadn't come from a gun Kate had owned. However, the case was never opened. It was officially declared that she took her own life, and that was that. It would seem that Kate Morgan, much like us, is unable to move on from this case, as she's said to still inhabit the Del Coronado to this very day around her former room, which has now been renamed room 3327. Guests report hearing all sorts of bizarre sounds: screaming, crying, wailing, laughing, all while staying in the room, reporting erratic and chaotic noises pretty much all hours of the night. Weirdly too, guests claim that while staying in 3327, the temperature of the room will change in bizarre ways, as if there'll be an intense, freezing cold front that lasts for a few short minutes and dissipates, or electronics malfunctioning. And this seems made up, but I did just get a cold, shock while reading through this, so she might be in the room with us recording right now. And if you are, Kate, hope you're doing well. So is Kate's ghost still checked into the hotel, doomed to wander the property until the crime can be solved? We may never know. Number 3, the Black Monk. Our next story is going to take us down to England yet again, this time in lovely Yorkshire. The scene was 1966. The Pritchard family lived quietly and under the radar, certainly expecting no trouble and definitely not expecting to be haunted. They just moved into their new house and were settling in when they started to notice some odd, troubling things, all the usual signs of a paranormal haunting: strange scratches, strange noises at all hours of the night, furniture shifting around. Those sound like the telltale symptoms of a poltergeist to me. They assumed it might just have been something natural because they've never seen a movie in their life, I guess. The mind just never wants to assume it's ghosts. It was as they were approaching a year of living in that new estate that the Pritchards truly became aware of what they had inadvertently welcomed into their lives. It seemed as if whatever entity that was haunting the Pritchard house had a keen interest in the family's younger members, primarily the young student Diane. On one occasion, she claims she felt herself being dragged across the hallway by her neck, and she even showed welts and bruises all over her neck afterwards. A red handprint was burned around her throat. Foregoing subtlety at this point, this is when the entity started to make itself manifest to the family, apparating as a dark-robed, hovering being that would appear at the family's beds during the middle of the night. Very ominous. A paranormal investigation was then called and found to be inconclusive. As soon as the investigators came, the haunting seemed to slow down, similar to what had happened in the South Shields case. Ghosts are just cowards as soon as you tell on them, eh? It seemed the Pritchard family had found peace, but the investigator involved was still bothered and continued to research independently, and discovered that the Pritchard estate was built upon the former grounds of a medieval rectory, and across the street from an old gallows where people used to hang out. After a little digging, he learned that one of the prisoners sentenced to death there was an old monk. The investigator suggested this monk's malevolent spirit was the evil entity that they saw wrapped in black, dubbing him the Black Monk. And from here, the case became a legend, eventually being made into a movie called When the Lights Go Out. Number 2, Esther Cox. Coming up next is going to be the story of Esther Cox and the haunting of Amhurst in Nova Scotia. It's a particularly famous Canadian ghost story, eh? It's sometimes referred to as the Great Amherst Mystery, and it's plagued and piqued the curiosity of paranormal enthusiasts for years the world over. In the late 1870s, Esther Cox was living at her sister's house alongside her brother-in-law and their children. At some point during 1878, Esther was attacked by a male friend who had tried to take advantage of her, leading to a rapid decline in Esther's mental health and emotional distress. And shortly thereafter, Esther's condition would be made infinitely worsened by the strange paranormal experiences that began to manifest on the Amhurst property. The Cox family would report strange noises all throughout the night, and Esther's body began to swell as she alternated between impossibly high fevers and deathly low chills. And shortly after this was when objects around the house would be reported moving. Oh, that's it. That's the telltale sign of a poltergeist. A little aside, guys, if you ever see your table moving across your living room, call the Ghostbusters right away. The family doctor who was visiting the Cox household claims that he once saw the words, "Esther Cox, you are mine to kill," written on the wall by the headboard. He tried to sedate her, but discovered that it really didn't do much to stop supernatural doings. Stressed and out of options, Esther thought that moving houses might be enough to stop the curse. But sadly, whatever is haunting her had their hooks in deep, as the ghosts would follow Esther through every house she moved to. Evidently, the spirits found this greatly offensive, as one of the houses Esther would move to would burn down while she was staying at it, resulting in Esther's arrest for arson and eventual conviction. Esther pleaded that she was innocent, and even witnesses backed up this, saying that everything Esther had been claiming had occurred as she'd said. But the old "a ghost did it" is an argument that rarely holds up in court, and Esther spent a year inside a cell. She was released in 1879 and would find a husband and raise a few children, seemingly free from the curse that once sought out to destroy her life. And number 1, Honest Abe. Would you believe that one of the most famous and most reported ghosts in American history is none other than the great emancipator himself, Abraham Lincoln? Honestly, Honest Abe gets seen more than just about any other ghost. Since his assassination, there have been numerous sightings of undead Abe wandering through the halls of the White House. Eleanor Roosevelt, of the Beatles fame, kept her study in what was formerly Lincoln's bedroom, pretty much just asking to bump into a ghostly stovepipe hat if you move into his bedroom. Roosevelt claimed that over the years she lived there, she could feel his presence and would sometimes see apparitions of him out of the corner of her eye. And while her husband was president, a number of other sightings would occur. A young clerk claimed that he saw Lincoln's spitting image, clear as day, sitting on the foot of a bed polishing his boots. On a visit from the Netherlands, Queen Wilhelmina claims that when she was spending a night inside the White House, she was visited by Lincoln's ghost knocking on her door. Calvin Coolidge's wife claims to have seen her on more than one occasion as well. First ladies were really out there seeing Lincoln. Claims that she saw him with his arms clasped behind his back, lost in thought looking out into the Potomac River. Wise. Winston Churchill had said that during the Second World War, he felt like he could see Lincoln's ghost coming to when the country needed him the most, and he also shared the most direct encounter and probably the funniest one. Now, Churchill used to love to relax by taking a long hot bath while enjoying a cigar. On one occasion, he says he stepped out of the bath, took a cigar, and walked into his bedroom and saw a man standing in the bedroom already, giving him quite a shock. He said when he saw the man's face, he laughed and said, "Good evening, Mr. President. You have me at a disadvantage." He claims he saw Lincoln chuckle wryly, then disappear. Presidents Truman, Roosevelt, and Hoover have all claimed to have seen inexplicable things around the White House, claiming they were all signs of Lincoln. In the last few decades, however, reportings of sightings of old Abraham Lincoln have calmed significantly. Perhaps he's finally been able to move on, or perhaps he's just very slowly checking out the rest of Washington, D.C. There's a whole lot of tourist spots and monuments to work through, and maybe he just got really caught up on the White House tour. He's got all the time in the